Good morning. The honor guard is getting ready in the back. I will welcome you and thank you for taking the time to remember. That's very important I know in my life, and I really hope it is in many of yours. Our speaker is not here yet, so I'm going to punt, hoping that we'll fit him in when he comes. And you've all been an MC at times where you've had to do that. So this is the 155th Memorial Day. And last night, if you watch PBS at Channel 2, they had the national concert at Washington, D.C. on the Mall. And I always watch that to get revved up for Memorial Day and to pay our tribute to those who sacrificed for you, for me, for our freedoms that we enjoy every day. We will begin. Please stand and remain standing for the advancement of colors. We will now have the Bonnie Lasses come forward, and we will say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ken Warner, the VFW chaplain for Post 5338 in Mapleton, will now have an invocation.
Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Almighty and eternal God, we come to you with thankful hearts for the men and women who served our country during times of war. When they were called, they were asked to make many sacrifices. They all had to say goodbye to wives, family, and others close to them. They left their homes and loved ones without parades or fanfare. They quietly said goodbye to their loved ones to defend their homes and country. Many of those brave souls would never return. Father, we gather here today to honor and celebrate the lives of those persons who gave their lives for our freedom. May we continue to remember the sacrifices that were given for us. We ask your blessings upon these young soldiers who didn't come back. Help us, dear God, that we never forget those who paid the ultimate price for this great country. We ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please be seated. We will now have a welcome by Commander Jerry Etherington. Okay. It's okay.
Well, I'm sure you all know me. I've given this welcome ceremony for quite a number of years, and I've always cut you a little slack. But this year, you're going to pay. You got 25 minutes. That's everyone else to do. Give you a show of hands if you want to hear a long speech. Well, Memorial Day to me, it means quite a bit. Well, to me, it's a sad day. I mean, cemeteries are full of flowers, and there's a number of us here that have lost a dear one in the last 3 or 4 years. And it's tough. There's no doubt about it. And me and my favorite friend, Coco, took my golf cart through the cemeteries. Tons of flags, tons of flowers, and actually the flags that were there, those boys come home. But there's thousands that never come home. They're in Arlington, France, England. They never made it home. And the ones that did make it home, they had a very good life. They got married, they had children, they raised their children, they had a good time. But the poor boys, they give the supreme sacrifice so we can have the life we have. It was tough on our families. They never seen their son again. So, to me, Memorial Day is a sad day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. We do have to, yes, Memorial Day is a day of remembrance. It is one of the saddest days for those who have lost loved ones. But we feel it is in our duty then to remember them, to spend some time, to take some time out of our day to walk through the cemetery, to spend some time at their grave, to spend some time in prayer. However you do it, it is whatever you feel that you can do to be a tribute to them. We now are honored to have Jared Chart join us again to give us the Gettysburg Address. We have to remember that we are commemorating all wars, the Civil War, the Vietnam War, the World War I, the World War II, the Afghani and the Iraqi wars. And so to cover the bases, so to speak, we like to have Jarrett remind us of the Civil War. And he will now share the Gettysburg Address. Did you want a handheld mic or do you want?
I'm not sure.
If you'd like it.
Whether I should be standing here, there, or up there, or down there. I just was sitting there looking at the screen as I came in, and I thought, when I saw the row on row of tombs, or gravestones in Arlington, and it said, we're glad you remember. And I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. I feel honored to be remembering the Gettysburg Address, which Abraham Lincoln gave on February 19th, 1863. Lincoln wasn't a West Point graduate. He wasn't a war statistician or technician, but he didn't want to be out there and see what was going on. And he appointed like 3 or 4 generals. He couldn't get the right one for the Civil War. Finally Grant came along, and Grant was creating victories all over the place out on the west side of the states. And Lincoln said, what about General Grant for a commander? And they said, oh, golly, he's got a problem with whiskey. He drinks a lot. And Lincoln said, well, find out what kind of whiskey he drinks, order a case, and let's appoint Grant as commander and see what he does. Grant went on and accepted he went on and accepted all the responsibilities involved. Like I said, Lincoln wanted to be involved. He went out to the battlefield one day and was just observing what was going on, and a captain grabbed his arm and pulled him down. He said, "Get down, you damn fool, you'll get shot." Later, Lincoln said he was glad someone remembered how to talk to a commanding officer. I now give you the Gettysburg Address. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so dedicated and conceived can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Thank you, Jarrett. That was so very well done. We appreciate that. We will now have a musical selection, God Bless America, sung a cappella by Summer Ulrich. Summer?
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Summer. You sing like a lark and on key. That's wonderful. Such talent we have. We were going to have our speaker now, and I don't think he's arrived yet, so we will go on to our tribute. Our tribute this year goes to Virginia Radcliffe. Virginia was a World War II Navy nurse, and she, unfortunately, I had my back surgery last year when she had her 100th birthday, and I wasn't able to go to that. But sadly, this spring, on April 6th, I was able to attend her funeral. She was 101, and when I went to the funeral, I met one of her sons, Dan. And Dan has agreed, and he has some things shared on the back easels of her in her Navy cap. And he has her original certificate, her graduate certificate from the School of Nursing. So make sure that you see that if you haven't on the way in. And Dan has agreed to say a few words in tribute to his mother. And then we have a plaque for him to take. Dan?
Greetings and a blessed Memorial Day to all, armed service members and their families, friends, neighbors. Thanks to everyone here as we remember and honor those who have served and protected us throughout the years. Thanks to Arlene Swanson and other organizers, contributors, and participants for their work in making this day happen. I thank the Mapleton VFW and Auxiliary for selecting my mother to be commemorated today. Ensign Virginia Claire Ratcliffe of the United States Navy served as a nurse during World War II from 1943 to 1945. Feels like a long time ago. It should, as she just passed away this year at age 101. She grew up as Virginia Oberly on a farm outside of Mankato and spent the majority of her life in Mapleton, where she was a faithful member of the VFW Auxiliary, Those of you who knew Virginia may remember her simply as Gin. I want to share a few service-era anecdotes gathered from conversations with her and others, sort of the cliff notes to an unauthorized biography. Mom loved the Navy. Like many, I imagine, she encountered a number of less than acceptable circumstances, but in the end, things were generally resolved properly, and she respected that. Virginia was trained at St. Mary's Hospital School of Nursing in Rochester. Graduating from a top institution meant she could have worked anywhere. Before enlisting in the Navy, she began her career at St. Joseph Hospital in Mankato, caring for preemies and assisting with an influenza outbreak. The military had a shortage of nurses, so boot camp was waived for her and a number of her colleagues from the Midwestern states. As such, these young women were not properly indoctrinated into the Navy and its strict chain of command, but instead relied on their Christian values and Hippocratic oath, augmented by on-the-job training. After enduring a long, grimy train trip to an Idaho rail station out in the middle of nowhere, she was greeted with disapproval for her improper attire by her escort to the Farragut Naval Training Station. Her time at Farragut was filled with new experiences, ranging from boat rides to a bear attempting to enter her quarters. Mom was put in charge of the communicable disease ward, as many new sailor recruits attending boot camp contracted measles and mumps. Among other care, she gave back rubs to men of every race, regardless of complaints by the more prejudiced patients. She once violated rationing rules by signing for sugar in order to bake a cake for the ward. When she explained it was to raise morale, she was reprimanded by an officer with a shrug and, "Don't do that anymore." An Associated Press photographer caught her on camera after slipping and landing in some fresh tar. To her embarrassment, the unflattering photo made it all the way back to her hometown newspaper. At one point, a nurse from Brooklyn arrived, claimed seniority, and pushed my mom out of her administrative position. But Virginia didn't mind, as she was happier doing hands-on work. And she soon regained her position after the brash New York nurse was reassigned for improper conduct with the commanding officer. Mom was eventually transferred to Naval Medical Center San Diego in Balboa Park, as there were a large number of casualties returning from the Pacific Theater of Operations. Buildings were adapted and tents erected. The small canyon between her barracks and the hospital was known as Bloody Gulch, and it was a dangerous walk requiring nurses to be escorted at night. One evening, she received a call from help as the working doctor was inebriated. There was no time to find an escort, so she took matters into her own hands and made the trip by herself. She ran to help save the patient and was able to locate another doctor. I recall a number of occasions where Mom praised Mormon Hospital corpsmen as the best she had worked with. They always followed orders and did their job well, she said. She also told of the time when she got a tour of the ship out in the harbor. She was amazed at how cramped it was, and with such tiny ladders. When Mom's own mother needed an operation and refused it unless her daughter was present, the Navy allowed Virginia to fly home for a week. My mom said the ride in the military transport plane was very uncomfortable, bumpy, and scary, but exciting. Another time, while on leave, Mom and other nurses shared a taxi and traveled across the Mexican border to Tijuana, hoping to find silk stockings that were unavailable in the US due to rationing. She also had a memorable trip to Los Angeles. However, there were not many places or much time where Virginia could spend her wages, so she sent most of her earnings back home for her father to save. She did purchase some wool blankets from the ship service supply store, one that I continue to use 80 years later. My father also served during World War II, a member of the Army in North Africa and Italy. He met my mom while on leave to visit his own father undergoing treatment at the Mayo Clinic and receiving care from my mother. Dad subsequently wrote many letters to Mom, and after being released from duty at the end of the war in Europe, he traveled to San Diego and proposed. They were soon married, and my mom was required to resign from the Navy, but with an honorable discharge. Prior to having children, Mom worked at the VA hospital in Sheridan, Wyoming as a civilian nurse. After moving to Mapleton, she continued to maintain her RN license until retirement. And as a volunteer, conducted hearing tests at school and helped with local immunizations and blood drives. World War II was fought and won by millions of heroes working together, sacrificing, and persevering. My mother was one of those many honorable service members and continued to serve others throughout her long life. It never bothered her how they ran the Navy as long as it was run right. Thank you.
That was a wonderful tribute. I'd like to present you with this plaque, and it says, VFW Post 5338 and Auxiliary would like to present this plaque to Virginia Radcliffe in appreciation for your service and sacrifice in World War II that helped keep our country and the world free. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If we don't have a speaker, that was wonderful, Dan. Thank you. We will now have Summer come again to lead us in America the Beautiful. Summer? I'm walking on my piano.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees thee on the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown
about you, but on the third verse, I kind of faded. We usually only sing, the first, right? Thank you for reminding us, Summer. We needed that. We now have Martha Price, who will say her 3-minute essay for the Voice of Democracy. This year, the Voice of Democracy theme was, "Why is the veteran important?" And Martha was our District 2 first place winner, and she went on to compete at the state level. And Jim and I were lucky enough to have our schedule free to join her and in that competition listen to all of them that were vying for the state. She does a wonderful job, so let's bring a round of applause for Martha.
246 years ago, the Declaration of Independence was born. This was monumental and unheard of for the time. It was the first formal statement in the world made by people of a nation advocating the right to choose their own government. It may have seemed unachievable, but the work of several brave individuals made freedom a possibility. Over the years, many aspects of the U.S. have changed, but we still rely heavily on the service of veterans to keep our country free. Veterans are important because they are the backbone of our country, exemplify patriotism, and endure loss because of their service. First, veterans are important because they are the backbone of America. You may know relatives or neighbors who have served in the armed forces. Although they don't always stand out, there are many individuals who have ensured the strength of the United States. 7% of the U.S. adult population in 2018 consisted of veterans, according to the United States Census Bureau. These determined men and women have served in conflicts spanning over several generations. At times when our democracy was on the line, brave individuals stood for what is right. Veterans have protected human rights around the world, as well as our freedom at home. It's clear, without veterans, our nation would not be free and other countries would suffer greatly. Next, veterans are important because they are examples of patriotism for citizens. By fighting in wars, veterans have risked their lives for us. This sacrifice places emphasis on the value of our country. Veterans' character in times of difficulty is an example of how we should act for our country. The men and women who have served our country show traits such as bravery, resilience, and loyalty. The selfless patriotism that veterans exemplify inspires American citizens to be proud of this land and also serve their country. Finally, veterans are important because of the sacrifices and sufferings they have endured. After battle, several veterans leave with physical and mental wounds. These disabilities come with honor, but at a great cost. Many veterans are struggling financially as they return home. A study by the New Harvard Public Citizen Study found that around 2 million veterans cannot afford health care. Veterans also have a high rate of homelessness. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that 131,000 veterans are homeless on any given night. Another challenge veterans face is mental disorders linked to high rates of suicide. According to the National Library of Medicine, veteran suicide rates are at the highest level in recorded history, with annual deaths by suicide at over 6,000 veterans per year. It is our patriotic duty to protect and care for those who have risked so much for our freedom. It's clear, we need veterans. They are average citizens, but their sacrifice goes beyond ordinary. Veterans are important because of their protection, leadership, and sacrifices toward America. Today, I ask you to thank those who have served this country. Give them a hand when they need it. Celebrate and respect the country veterans have protected for generations. Dear veterans, you will not be forgotten. Your service has given us the chance of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I know if our forefathers could see the veterans representing our country, they would be proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. We are very proud of you. We now have the end of our program. Sharks, I was going to give the old, if the speaker, who was a staff sergeant Marine, I was going to give him the old hoorah, you know, the Semper Fi, something. But anyway, I'll have to wait for that. Just wait when he thinks of what he had agreed to do today. Oh well. Anyway, we will now have a poem by Diane Smith, and that will be the end of our near the end of our program. And Diane, would you come forward to share that with us?
Well, Arlene just gave me permission to talk for a couple of minutes, I guess, as a substitute speaker, about the book that I put together. I guess most of you probably know me. My name is Diane Smith. My husband is Peter Smith, a combat veteran from the 101st Airborne. About 2 or 3 years ago, all of these grandchildren started to arrive. We had 8 in less than 8 years. 7 boys, 1 girl. And I got to looking at them and thinking, you know, some of these children might be interested in the military when they're older, but at least they should know what Papa Pete, they should know about his service. And I thought, we're getting older, and they're young. They're now from 2 years old to 10 years old. And I thought, if I don't tell the story, nobody will. They will never know. And so I discussed it with Peter, and then I contacted by email his battle buddies, who are all across the country, from California to Maryland. Some of them knew me, some of them didn't. But I relied heavily on their input to put this all together. And I had permission to use their artwork, their journals that they wrote as part of their healing process. All of them had a lot of scars, mental scars from battle. And their responses were very interesting. So it took me about a year to compile everything, and the way I told Papa Pete's story was I interviewed him about a certain topic, and then I would take notes like crazy, and then when the interview was over, I would write everything up in the first person, like Peter himself was talking. And that was how I did that. And then I would insert just other things that I thought might be of interest to the children, explanations of military things that someone who wasn't raised in a military household would need help in understanding. Some of you have read the book. It ended up being 87 pages. So it's not, it's not volumes. And I thank you for your interest. And then after this was printed last fall, I didn't publish it. I'm not that kind of author. This was strictly for family and friends and community, as the VFW has some copies of it. Anyway, after it was completed, all of a sudden all these letters surfaced. I think one of my daughters found them. I didn't even know they existed. It was between Peter and his family, his Grandma Michael, Grandma Smith, Grandma Doris Michael. And I thought, these should have been included, but I didn't even know they existed. So I continued, I thought, I'm gonna add an addendum or I'm gonna create something more. And I've decided now I'll insert these things into the original copy. One of the interesting things I found was a letter written to him. He was in he was in the something beyond advanced, or something beyond infantry training, artillery, I think. And his little sister, who had just entered 2nd grade, wrote him a letter that's just adorable. And then she ends the letter with her drawing of a cannon. And it's priceless. And then another thing, you probably all remember Elizabeth Smith, his grandma. Well, in Vietnam, they did not have, they didn't have any bug repellent or bug spray that worked out in the jungle. So they had to rely on family from, to send them stuff. His mother sent him Raid, which I guess was effective. And Elizabeth bought something from the Watkins man, some insect repellent. It cost her $7 in 1967. She kept the receipt all those years. And if you know Elizabeth, $7 in 1967, that was a lot of money for her to send to #1 grandson. But anyway, I'm continuing to add things, and I'm going to try to get it done this summer and just insert it wherever I feel it's appropriate. And I guess that's all I'll say about that. Those of you who have read the book or are interested in reading it, I thank you for your interest. And there have been those who have no interest at all, but that's okay too. That's what veterans fight for. And so as part of my new and improved book, I found this poem in a book that I read about a World War II soldier. And I thought this will be my final page in the book. And it is mainly for my grandchildren, so that they will know. They'll know about the military, they'll know about Papa Pete. And anyway, I hope that I can convey to them the importance of Memorial Day, importance of veterans in your life, and they will know, I hope. So this poem is called Final Thought, and it's written by Charles Michael Province of the U.S. Army. And it's short, thank goodness. It is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Well said. And we do have the book, her books, and we're going to, we have a few copies. We are checking it out like a library book. And so we want to, pass it around to those who are interested. And if you are, just let us know. At this time, we will have the benediction by Ken Warner, and then I'll have you stand, and then we'll have taps played by the Dylan Pasmore and A.J. Kunkel, and drummed by Izzy Anderson. And then we will have the colors retired. So we'll just kind of flip those two around. So please stand and remain standing, and I'll have Ken Warner give us our benediction.
Heavenly Father, we ask your continued blessing for our country with freedom, peace, and righteousness. Through thy favor, may we meet at last before thy throne in heaven. We praise thy great name forever and ever. Amen.
We will now have the retiring of the colors by post 5338. I want to thank you all for coming and for remembering and sharing this program with us. The color guard will go to the cemeteries, Calvary at 11:45, and the Union at 12 noon. 12:20 they'll be at Oak Hill, and at 12:40 they will be at the Morrow Cemetery. Lastly, they'll come up across from Casey's, and at 1 o'clock they'll be at the Monument Park. A special thank you to all for coming, and to Dick Dietz, our sound man and video man, Gail Baining and the Miss Bonnie Lasses for helping, and Cindy Redding for helping with today, and for the United Church for housing us. And on the way out, be sure to grab a water and a cookie and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.